Hey, listeners, thanks for tuning in. If you're enjoying Speaking Soundly, please consider supporting our work with a tax-deductible donation. You can easily contribute on our website at artfulnarrativesmedia.com/donate, or just click the link in the show notes of this episode. Every donation, no matter the size, helps us keep bringing you inspiring conversations with remarkable artists. Thank you so much for your continued support. We really appreciate it. Be sure to check out slippeddisc.com for the latest inside information on classical music now. Want to know more about your favorite composers, masterpieces, and instruments of the orchestra? Check out WETA Classical's podcast, Classical Breakdown, your guide to classical music, to discover more about the music you love. You can find Classical Breakdown wherever you listen to podcasts or online at classicalbreakdown.org. Looking for world-class performances at an accessible price point? See yourself at Lincoln Center Presents free and choose what you pay performances. Where else in New York City can you experience contemporary flamenco, mental health-inspired choral works, experimental jazz, and an interactive family dance performance, all in the same week and for less than the price of lunch? Explore the full calendar of events today at lincolncenter.org/presents. Grammy Award-winning violin virtuoso and Carnegie Hall Perspectives artist Maxim Vengerov knew early on that the violin was more than just an instrument to master. It was his ticket to a musical journey.
I was quite realistic when all kids at the age of 5, they were dreaming, I'm going to become an astronaut, I'm going to be president. I knew what I was doing, what I was going to become. It was a green path for me to the world. I wanted to travel. My instrument was my transportation.
You're listening to Speaking Soundly, a backstage pass to today's biggest stars of the music world. I'm your host, David Krauss, principal trumpet of the Metropolitan Opera. During each episode, you'll hear me speak with inspiring performers about their creative process and the personal journey that led them to the stage. It's so great to be speaking with you, and actually it's kind of surreal because when I was in college, I had a CD of yours called Virtuoso Vengerov, and it made a huge impact on me, not only because of your incredible violin playing, but it just felt cool somehow that someone my same age was performing on a level that sounded like it took a lifetime to achieve. It just sounded limitless. So now that I have you here, I'd like to ask, when you play, do you feel what I heard in that recording, that like anything is possible?
First of all, David, thanks for having me here. This is a wonderful honor to be here. Yes, as long as I remember myself, music meant more than just a job. It was always a way of living, philosophy of life. I always had the spiritual, religious feeling about music. Once I get into the stage, the aim was always to be in the zone. And yes, you play for people, but you play for yourself. You play for something that will make you possibly better every day. And that was also the goal. Is a little bit also the sportive feeling, because every day has to be better one. And I remember the first time I went into the recording studio in Melodia, the legendary producer Kondrashin, who, I was 10 years old. I didn't know how the recording is going to be. And he said, you arguably can be, Maxim, the youngest person ever to record an LP. He said that first time. And I remember we worked quite intensely for 2 days. And after the recording has been edited, I couldn't believe my ears. I was so much better than I could have expected. So I wanted immediately to bring this quality onto the stage and to make this a live performance. And I must stress that during the time of Soviet Union, you weren't just presenting your art and yourself, but you were playing for the country, as big as it sounds. Yes.
Did you feel that at 10?
Of course. It was enormous pressure. Thank God I was 10. And, but even when I was younger, it was always bigger than myself. But then on the other hand, it really helped me in the later life. I present music, and I have to be the greatest advocate today because I'm standing on big stage. I have to make it justice to this music.
What do you think it is about music as an art form that allowed you as a young child to tap into it so profoundly and so deeply?
In Soviet Union, we didn't have many things to do. The greatest values for people were friendship, love, sports, and music. And then everything that involved socializing. And even there, we had restrictions. So finally, when I was with my violin, I felt liberated. Even though, of course, I didn't feel to certain degrees the limitations of Soviet Union because I was born there. It was my life. I had a very strict discipline at home. I had to work 7-8 hours a day. I had only very limited time to socialize. So I learned to enjoy every instant. And I think that's the greatest thing when you play music, you enjoy everything.
Given the countless hours you dedicated to the violin, do you think that you could have achieved a similar level of success in any other pursuit?
I think, because of also my name, Maxim, I wanted to do everything to the maximum. Even I remember I loved swimming very much. So I started swimming, and I was swimming for an hour, quite fast. And then one sports trainer said, look, he's going to be a champion. So I think, I enjoy doing everything to the max and to do the best I can.
Yeah.
Again, it was never always about me only, but it was about, can I make an impact? Can I touch people? Can I move them?
You grew up in a very musical household. Your father was an oboist and your mom a choral conductor. What drew you to the violin instead of following in their footsteps? As a child, I would have been much more interested in seeing my mom wave her arms in front of a choir or seeing my dad with sharp knives making reeds. Why the violin?
Well, surely I didn't want to make reeds because my father got so frustrated doing them and breaking them every time he wasn't happy with
That
it.
happens, yeah.
So I didn't want to have that life of my dad playing oboe. Also for the reason that oboists are sitting, far behind.
You wanted to be in front.
I wanted to be in front. I wanted to shine. I wanted to play for people. Now, initially, I wanted to become a conductor because I watched my mom. And then there was a local orchestra, Novosibirsk Philharmonic, where our legendary conductor, Arnold Katz, was conducting. And I looked up to him when I was already 3. And I spent all my early days in the orchestra. I was
So
practically...
you wanted to be a conductor at 3?
Yeah, I said, I'd like to be like you. I said to conductor. And he said, don't conduct. Why don't you play the oboe and I can fire your dad? But then I had to start an instrument, and I chose violin.
Your parents and your teachers knew very early on that you had a natural gift for the violin, but when was the first time you realized you had something special? And I mean, as a child, it must have felt like having a superpower.
I remember it was already in one of the first concerts when I played for half an hour at the age of 5, played some great works of Mozart and small variations of Paganini. And I was really preparing quite hard for that, and I didn't know why I should be doing this. But then there was an audience of like 500 people, and I thought, wow, that's cool. And I was telling my friends, I felt so proud that I could play for people. And all of a sudden, all my efforts, they were worth it. I remember being surrounded with music, and I just loved this feeling. It was totally awesome. And then I was quite realistic. When all kids at the age of 5, they were dreaming, I'm going to become astronaut. I'm going to be president. I knew what I was doing. It was about always a reality. And also, again, about Soviet Union, it was a green path for me to the world. I wanted to travel. My instrument was my transportation.
I want to ask you about your first teacher, Galina Turchanova, is that
Turchaninova.
right?
Turchaninova. So first of all, torture.
Turchaninova.
Turchaninova.
Got it. Wow, that's a good way to put it. Well, speaking of torture, I know that you two didn't hit it off very well at first, and I have to ask you if it's true that when you were 5, you became so frustrated with the violin that you actually threw a punch during a tantrum and it landed on her.
I love...
I mean, this is legend, but
Yes.
you're here, so I figured I'd ask.
It's good that you ask me. It actually was during our first meeting. She asked me to sing some songs just to test my musicality. She asked me to tap a few things. So I was tapping the rhythm, different rhythm. She says, okay, I'm quite happy with that. Now, do you have any strength? Can you show me? I said, yeah, and I punched her in the stomach.
You talked about the countless hours that you put in when you were younger. Did you enjoy practicing at first?
I hated practicing, to be honest, because who does? Rarely I enjoyed practicing. I enjoyed the results later, yes.
So did that early discipline come also from your parents? Like, were you just forced to practice, or was it all on you?
Of course, parents, especially my mother, played indispensable role, because basically the Galina Turchaninova treated kids like adults. So I didn't feel like I was a child. Already at the first concert, she would, after the concert, she would criticize me. I said, this was good, this was not good. So yeah, I mean, psychologically, there was not much choice for me. I just had to do it. And my mom was incredible in finding always a key, friendly key, I would say, to convince me to say, let's do it together, and she would be during nights. I would practice during nights because during the day she was working for 12 hours at her music school. She was an incredible person. She led orphanage where she organized a music school. She was director of another school and director of the choir, teacher for voice, piano. So her responsibilities and social responsibilities were huge. So when she came home, we had very short time. She cooked dinner, then we played together for half an hour, and then, as I say, the torture started.
And how long into the night would you practice?
Yeah, sometimes until 3, 4 in the morning.
Come on.
Because we had to do things, we had to achieve things for the next lesson. So, I would come the next morning to the lesson completely not awake. And then the teacher said, well done, but why you look as if you didn't sleep the whole night? And my mom said, yeah, it's true, you didn't. For good or for bad, it served the purpose, and I never regret it.
Did you feel like that training that you got toughened you up? For example, I've seen videos of you playing in gloves. Is that just a necessary skill to master, having grown up in a place like Siberia?
My teacher, first teacher, Galina Turchaninova, used to say, if you can play with gloves, you can definitely do without. And I'd say what doesn't kill you, makes you stronger. And I'm really that I was born in the hardship, in the colderness and the wilderness. And now I take this strength with me. I take the better part of that. And I use it all the time. And that makes me and also my music stronger. Nothing happens for no reason.
You have a prolific recording career, and most people only have photos or videos to look back on. but you have recordings that capture specific moments in time through your playing. When you listen to these recordings, do you appreciate the musical choices from that time, or do you find them kind of dated and cringy, like you're looking back at old hairstyles and outfits?
One of the greatest assets in my life, it was recording, because I learned from my recordings. I sometimes refer to the ones that I was 22, 23, and I want to get one or another element back to my playing. Because throughout the life, your style changes, but then it's important to look back and say what has been lost, possibly. Because, if you don't take time and don't take track of your life, if you don't analyze, life goes by, and you can have the tendency to lose the roots. For instance, 2 years ago, I was playing Mozart. I was listening to the current recording. I said, well, something is missing for me. And then I went back to the 10-year-old recording and said, okay, that we can get back.
Most people are exactly the opposite. Like, they keep trying to, reinvent themselves. You listen to actors all the time say, I never watch my movies. Once it's done, it's in the past. But it's nice to hear someone say, I want to capture something that was in my past because it was a beautiful thing, and I'm trying to retain it.
Sometimes when in the earlier recordings, there is this spontaneity, and there is some element of playing that was without thinking. Of course, at that time, there was no probably wisdom, and there were no deeper colors. But you don't want to forget the good old self.
Following in the footsteps of one of your great inspirations and mentors, Rostropovich, of course, the great cellist and conductor, you began conducting alongside your busy career as a violin soloist. Now, maybe you know this already, but every member of an orchestra secretly thinks that he or she could do a better job of conducting than most conductors, and that playing the music is way harder than leading it. So I want to hear it from the horse's mouth. What's more difficult, playing the violin or conducting?
I have the solidarity with all musicians that think they can do it better. Because, until I started conducting, I also thought myself, I can do it better. But then, when I stood in front of orchestra, I asked myself two questions. First of all, can the orchestra play without me? And can I add anything? So for me, there was always a question, why do I stand in front of the orchestra? Under which authority?
Right.
Is it just my name? And then this was absolutely no for me, because I wanted to be there because I could add something. And then what can I add? And the first thing that occurred to me, I have imagination of the sound. So if the conductor doesn't bring the sound of his or her own, then probably, it's better to let musicians play on their own. Because the sound identity must be brought by individual. And the identity of sound is like a fingerprint of every musician. And this is why we need conductor, for the big symphonies at least. I think there is nothing more fulfilling than actually producing the sound that comes out of your fingers, right and left hand, There's something physical about this. Conducting is more spiritual. Your instrument is the orchestra. And you connect to it. It's, at some level, is very stronger because you're not bound to some material. But, I think while we're alive and while we can, it's so wonderful to play.
You were appointed a UNICEF Goodwill ambassador, where you perform for children all over the world. Can you share a memorable experience from that role and how it's shaped your views on music as you see its impact in the communities that you're playing?
Because I was growing up in this severe society with its limitations in many aspects in Soviet Union, when I moved to the West, it was like being in heaven. I went to study in Germany when I was 13. Then I went to UK, then started traveling around the world. And by the age of 2021, life was like a dream. And I was so thankful. But then there came a point and I said, so what's next? And then I met my PR. She asked me, what do I like to do? I said, I feel so fortunate. I'd like to also give something back. I love to work with kids because my mother set the great example of impacting children. And she set me up with people from UNICEF. And I said, I'd like to go to the trouble areas, even with the conflict areas, where I could bring my violin, play for kids directly. I want to play somewhere where music would not be performed. And they initiated the first project for me in Uganda. And they were in a terrible state. There were war children. It was incredibly traumatic experience for me to see these kids without parts of their bodies that had nothing to look for in their lives. And I could see how my music, when I started playing, has lit their souls. The change I was able to make with just violin and the bow, and they started, waving and dancing to it. It was an unforgettable experience that changed me forever and probably added another dimension into my human life. I think music is the greatest resort and the escape. Music is not anymore luxury, but a savior. So I'm very fortunate to be a musician.
You are one of this season's Perspectives artists at Carnegie Hall, which gives audiences a unique insight into your inspirations as a performer and an artist. You'll be performing throughout the season, and I'm particularly excited for your Brahms concerto with my orchestra, the Metropolitan Opera Orchestra. What does being a Perspectives artist mean to you, and what can audiences expect to hear throughout the season from you at Carnegie Hall?
It's an enormous honor, privilege, and joy to be here in Carnegie Hall, not only performing once, but to hold several performances throughout the year. I wanted to share my musical aspirations with audiences that I love in different aspects. First of all, as a violinist, of course, I'm really looking forward to the concert that you mentioned with the Metropolitan Orchestra. I'm starting with the Perspective season with the two performances of complete Mozart concertos with Orpheus Chamber Orchestra, where I performed all 5 concertos.
That's a lot of playing.
It's a lot of playing, but I always loved Mozart. I used to perform it already when I was 5, and Mozart follows me all my life. Young Mozart, he was 19 when he wrote these 5 violin concertos, a genius, playing on the violin. And the funny thing is that when he performed concerto number 5, his father, he wrote a letter to him, "Dear Wolfgang, I think your 5th concerto finally reached out to me, and I dropped a tear in the 2nd movement." And I also think if you give it a little more time to practice violin, you could have become a good violinist.
I know Carnegie Hall is like a home to you in that you've played here many times throughout your career. What was your first experience?
I remember playing the first time in Carnegie when I was 16. And the wife of late Isaac Stern stood up after performance on stage, and she asked me to say a few words. And I took the microphone, and that's where I really became frightened. During performance, I felt so much at home. It was so beautiful. First of all, Carnegie Hall has unique acoustic. There isn't another hall of this enormous beauty. But when I had the microphone in my hand, I started shaking.
That's when you freaked out.
Yeah, that's when I freaked out. But I always feel at home there because the audience, the building itself, the history, and so much music that has been here, legendary composers, musicians, and chamber music, you name it. And now I was offered a Perspective. What a great honor and great joy.
I want to end by asking you about resonance. As a violinist, you can actually feel your Stradivarius resonating throughout your body. As a conductor, you can hear the resonance of a legendary acoustic like Carnegie Hall. And as a performer, you can sense how the music you create resonates with the audience. How does that process of performing resonate within you?
I think you tapped into the area that is probably one of the important aspects of our life, because on the daily basis, we have to create this resonance, whether in our families, in society, speaking with friends, dealing with our businesses, or indeed in the stage. And as a musician, I was lucky to have the opportunity to create this resonance on a daily basis, because every note, you have to strive for the perfection. There is nothing perfect, but when you jump into the perfect resonance, you hit the target right in the middle, and you feel, oh, this is a perfection. This is the ideal case scenario for the world, when there is peace and love and respect for others.
And you get to experience that every time you pick up the violin.
Yes, that's how lucky I am.
I hope you enjoyed this episode of Speaking Soundly. If you liked what you heard, please tell your friends about it. Help spread the word. And follow us on Instagram at SpeakingSNDLY. For more information, you can visit our website, artfulnarrativesmedia.com. If you're new to the show, you could go back and check out earlier episodes featuring Wynton Marsalis, Regina Spektor, Joyce DiDonato, Emmanuel Axe, and Rufus Wainwright, just to name a few. And tune in 2 weeks from today on December 24th to hear cellist Elisa Weilerstein speaking soundly.